Travelling with a disability should be part of everyday life, but many disabled people report daily struggles with journeys able-bodied people take for granted. The National Travel Survey found disabled people made just under 73% of the number of trips of an adult without a disability. Buses have proved a particular problem, with 77% of people with a disability reporting difficulty getting on and off, and over 2/3 of disabled travellers no longer even using buses. I'm Georgia Hill and I have spina bifida. I like to go out and about, but for me, transport has proved a challenge. I want to find out what more can be done to improve the travel experience for people with a disability. I've come to meet Sue. She has a condition called isthmic spondylolisthesis, where parts of the spine slide apart. She's had different surgeries to improve this, but unfortunately it's broken again and is inoperable, leaving her in chronic pain. Because of this, she uses crutches and her wheelchairs to keep her mobile. Sue had some very interesting experiences when flying abroad.
I always have to have a pusher, because I take my manual chair, not my electric, because that's just too much aggravation. And they broken one of my wheelchairs. My wheelchair came out, and you know when you open it up and you push it into its seat, well, halfway down the base of the seat, the frame curved right in. So we spent ages at the desk with them trying to see if they could force it, which wasn't a very good idea. So then they have to, it was obviously just the way that they'd thrown it into the plane, because it would always come back with dinks and God knows what. So we had to then tell them, you know, that where we were. Then the chap came out the next day with a wheelchair, brand new one, for me to borrow while I was over there. And then they had to arrange, when I got back, to send me a new wheelchair over here, which they did. And I didn't have to wait, I think it was like a week or so by the time I'd got back, because I stayed over there a month. I did have one occasion where, when I was coming off of the small plane and waiting for everyone else to get off, one dear old lady decided she liked the look of my chair and sat in it, and they almost wheeled her off because they didn't check her ID. So of course I happened to be right at the front, thank goodness, and said to the air hostess, excuse me, but that lady's sitting in my chair and that's a private chair, not an airport chair. So she did get the pilot to radio down and say, could you just get that lady out of that chair and into an airport chair? That's not hers. So yeah, I think communication could be a lot better between, you know, the airport and the planes themselves.
When speaking to Sue about these issues, I asked her who she travelled with, and she said she only travelled with United Airlines. I contacted them to find out what they had to say about issues like these, and they simply said, United is committed to offering clean, safe, reliable and accessible transportation for all customers, including those with disabilities. To save myself from a stressful flight, I've arranged a Skype interview with a woman who's no stranger to long-distance travel. Emily Yates is a travel writer and accessibility consultant currently living in Glasgow. Emily works with Enhance the UK and believes there's no such thing as the non-disabled, there's just the not yet disabled, because, although hopefully through old age, everyone will face some sort of difficulty in their life and we should have access that works for everyone.
I think that in terms of travel, there are lots of organisations that are coming out at the moment and have been established for quite some time actually, that take disabled people on a trip, on a holiday, with other disabled people. And I think that's brilliant and there's absolutely a place for that. But what I want to see more of is businesses and organisations that encourage disabled people to travel independently, because I've been on brilliant trips with other disabled people, but I don't want to do that all the time. You know, I don't want to be categorised as a disabled person all the time, everywhere that I go. Sometimes I want to go with my boyfriend who's not disabled. Sometimes I want to go with my family who aren't disabled, you know. So I think one thing that we really need to encourage is other disabled people travelling independently. And if I can have even the smallest part within that, I'd be really chuffed. I think the accessibility that we have now in many situations is brilliant. So, for example, I think every single bus in London is wheelchair accessible, which is fab, and we should celebrate those things probably more than we do. But equally, I think access and inclusion is still a massive tick box exercise. And I think one of the biggest problems is that businesses and organisations so often don't involve disabled people when they're actually planning these things. So first of all, they'll build something and then they'll think, access. We've not thought about that. And secondly, they'll think, oh yeah, let's plan access first. We're going to do really well with this. But it'll be loads of able-bodied people that are on the committee rather than a disabled person. So I think what we've got is great and we should celebrate that. But equally, I think when we're moving forward to improve access, because of course it can always be improved, we need to think about who we're involving in this and at what time within the building journey we're involving them. I think that there's a big kind of divide in access and inclusion. One of those is physical access, so ramps and automatic doors and all of those things. But actually, I think the most important thing about access and inclusion is what I call social access. So I could go into the most accessible, inclusive hotel in the world that was the most physically accessible place I'd ever been to. And if I was treated like a second-class citizen by the staff, it would mean nothing to me. So I think some of my most positive experiences have been just people's willingness to help and actually learn a little bit more. I remember I was working in Brazil. I was the access consultant for the transport network in Rio on the lead up to the 2016 games. And it was an amazing job, but it was flipping difficult. And I remember one day, I think I was just a bit homesick and I'd had quite a tough day at work. And I'd just left the office and I just started crying. And this taxi driver came to pick me up to take me back to my apartment. And he saw that I was upset and he just put Pharrell's Happy on and started singing to it the whole journey home. And it was just so cute. It was nothing to do with the fact that I was disabled, but just his willingness to make me feel better and include me in his little life for that 20 minutes was just beautiful. And I think the more willing people are to help you, to offer a little bit of help and to include you within their world as a disabled person, that means everything.
I've been thinking about what Emily said in regards to social access having an impact on the way that we all travel. Definitely in my personal travel experiences, if physical access isn't instantly available to me, but someone has offered to at least to try their best to help me get on board, I feel less stressed about the situation and less of an inconvenience, and more of just a human being with needs that has the right to travel like everybody else. I did, however, still question what more could be done to make the idea of travelling less daunting before you even leave the door. I found AccessAble, formerly known as Disabled Go, which is a guide that tells me the access arrangements for different locations not only close to me but across the UK. Using this should help me plan where I'm going, so I'm confident that it's suitable for my access needs before I even make the effort to get there. I've arranged to speak to the marketing manager, Carrie-Anne, to learn more about the app and to find out how the information can benefit everybody to make going out and about easier.
We found this name Disabled Go was actually restricting us, was actually restricting our user base in terms of the people who were accessing the information. Even parents with buggies and things like that, this information has the potential to be really helpful to lots of different groups of people. And what we didn't want to do was restrict our user base in that way. We're not particularly concerned about who you are, what disability you have, anything like that. Essentially, if our information is helpful to you, then that's brilliant. And that's we want to reach and help as many people as possible. We have a call team, we have a quality team who are solely responsible for checking and proofreading of the access guide when it's created, and then also for contacting every business that we have details for at least once a year to double check that the information is still up to date. If there's a small change, then we'll note that down there and then and update the access guide straight away. If it's something like a structural change that needs a revisit, then we'll send a surveyor out to go and revisit. I've worked in the accessibility world for 13 plus years now. I think there's still a huge amount of work to be done. I think, you know, as an organisation, AccessAble has a lot of potential to grow. We are aware that we don't have 100% coverage in the UK, and that's absolutely what we're working towards.
It's not just planned long-distance travel that poses a problem for the disabled community. Many social media users post regularly about their hang-ups with using public transport in their day-to-day lives. One of the recurring themes throughout these posts comes from services provided on trains. To discuss some of these issues regarding train travel, I contacted my local station manager, who agreed to let me come and have a conversation with one of the supervisors, Tony. So how many people on average per day do you have requiring assistance?
It varies every day. We get a list every day, which is a booked assistance list. But obviously we do get people that just turn up and not expect to travel, but they turn up and they want to travel somewhere, either southern or southeastern. We had no booked assistance yesterday, but we had 9 people that travelled. The policy states that they prefer you to have booked assistance, which is 24 hours before. But to be fair, everyone at the station, if someone turns up, we're not going to say, you can't travel, you haven't booked. We try and facilitate as many people to travel as we possibly can.
How do you go about unplanned, spontaneous travelling?
Unplanned, we get quite a few. Like I say, normally it's just done by the gate line as they come into the station. If there's no gate line, then the ticket office, if they're not busy, they spot and radio across to us on the platforms. Depending where they're travelling to, if it's a London terminal from like Charing Cross, London Bridge, Waterloo East, they have to come onto our platform. But platform 2 is an unmanned platform, so we rely on just us seeing them really.
Do you think there's a future in Access that won't require manual assistance?
It would be nice in an ideal world, but because of the varying levels of our platforms and the heights of the train, I can't actually see them as being able to do any sort of automatic ramps or anything else. I think it's going to have to be done manually, purely and simply for the different levels of people we have to assist. You know, sometimes it's just elderly people with luggage that can't get on and off the trains. Other times it's wheelchairs, or it's the motorised scooters, or it's people with crutches. So I don't think you can take away the personal element to it really.
I've seen locally, but also across the UK on social media and things, where people have come across the priority seating being taken up with luggage and rubbish and toilets being broken. So how do you go about making sure that that doesn't happen as often as possible?
Wow, that's really for the conductors on board. It's not really something we can do at station. We can obviously make the conductors aware that there is an issue with it. Really, should you use a disabled carriage if the toilets aren't working? I don't think it's really fair on the passengers using it to be put in that position, but again, if they're only doing a short journey, can you take off people using a whole carriage just for certain individuals? So it's a tough one. It's something that needs to be ironed out. I mean, if I put someone on a disabled coach or carriage now and the toilets aren't working, I'll speak to the person and say, toilets aren't working, how long's your journey? Do you want to move coaches? And if the coach further down, then we will delay the train, get the people back off and move them further down and put them on one where the toilet is working. I think the main problem we have some of the times is people using bikes and pushchairs, using the disabled access points, so it makes it harder for people that want to travel. You still get the remarks from people, the tuts and the sighs, and I'm here, why have I got to move? But it's clearly labelled as a disabled area, so it should be allocated for people that have booked to travel or just turn up. Personally, it wouldn't hurt to have more carriages. Why not have them all that way? Then people with pushchairs and buggies and bikes, and it wouldn't be just allocated to one. I mean, on a 12 car, you've got 3 disabled cars. But if you've got lots of people travelling that day, what do they have to do? Wait for the next train or take an earlier train? So it's a little bit unfair that way.
So what happens if someone's not on the station platform, it's unmanned, or even on the trains as well?
Trains shouldn't happen. You shouldn't really have a train running without anyone on board. I know for Southerns, obviously with the OBSs, they should be getting you on the train and off the train. With platforms, really, if they are unmanned, unfortunately, it will be down to the person that's got the booked assistance or just turns up. They've got to try and get the attention of the onboard supervisor or the conductor, because they can get them on because they have ramps on board the trains. If you're on a packed platform, your chances of doing that are pretty slim. And a lot of the trains, when they come in, they just look, make sure it's clear, and they go. They don't look for passengers that are expecting to travel and have assistance.
And what happens if, for example, this station has a lift? What happens when that breaks?
Several options open to us. We can, if it's for a train that's inbound to us and the lifts aren't working, we can actually work with the signalman and get the train put onto the opposite platform so the lifts aren't actually needed. Or if you're travelling to somewhere, if we can't get the platform retrained, or the train replatformed, sorry, then we can obviously either get you a taxi to another station or we can get you a taxi to your final destination.
And what happens when there's disruption?
Generally during disruption, everything's up in the air anyway, so we just pretty much, we have a procedure we're supposed to follow, but when it is major disruption, it kind of all goes out the window, so we just like playing it as we go. Generally, we find that, you know, we're there, we help them out as much as we can, because we want to be there and make it as pain-free for them as possible on the travelling side, because it's a pain in the backside, travelling anyway. If you're able-bodied or disabled, it still can be a daunting experience, but we just try and make it as normal for them as we can. Sometimes it's not possible because we don't have the staff, but you know, it's like everything in life, there's obstacles in the way, but most of us smile, most of us try.
Speaking to Tony has shown that the people there to provide assistance are genuinely trying their best to make travelling as easy as possible, but often don't have the resources to allow for everyone with access requirements to travel spontaneously. He told me that although there's a policy in place, he personally would do whatever possible to ensure a smooth journey for any disabled person. It's this positive attitude towards disability that demonstrates Emily's theory of social access and people's willingness to accommodate where possible that really makes the difference when travelling. None of the people I spoke to believe that it will be possible to have perfect physical access within our lifetime, but with a positive increase in awareness of disability, the trials and tribulations of travelling should at least feel less challenging.